If part of you is wondering, what if I panic when labor gets intense? This is for you. That fear of the unknown, of not feeling in control, it's exactly why I created My Essential Birth. So you're not walking into birth hoping it goes well. You're walking in knowing what to do. Right now, it's $100 off, just $197, and you'll get the Mother's Day bonus bundle, including the empowering meditation track, birth affirmation audio and cards, and the birth partner quick reference guide. So when things get intense, your mind knows how to stay calm, and your birth partner knows exactly how to support you without having to guide them through it. Go to myessentialbirth.com/get started, all one word, and start feeling ready for your birth today.
For anyone who is hoping to exclusively breastfeed, I would highly recommend getting someone who has breastfed before, whether that's a friend, a family member, or a lactation consultant, to be with you that first bit, because I know it can be really hard. You're learning, the baby's learning, and your body's never done that before. And so having someone to help coach you and also just give you reassurance that it will continue to get better and better. And now 4 months in, I'm so glad I stuck to it, because it's just amazing to be like, I'm nourishing this baby and he's like almost 19 pounds now. And like, it's just the most special bond. So it is hard. Like, you're very sore and tender those first few weeks, but it gets better. So hang in there. You've got this, moms.
Getting pregnant and giving birth are two of the most exciting things you can ever hope to experience in this life. The moment you think you could be pregnant, you're frantically searching for all the best information, which is why you're here today. I'm Stephanie King, and with my many years of experience as a professional childbirth educator, doula, and lover of all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, I'm here to make preparing for your birth enjoyable, empowering, and totally easy. Each week, I'll cover different topics, interview professionals, and get into the nitty-gritty birth stories from mamas just like you. And when you're ready for more, you can join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I take you step by step through exactly how to prepare your mind, body, spirit, and partner for a birth you love. So let's get started. All right, we are back with another birth story for you guys, and this one is with Mary. So Mary, say hello to everybody, and then I want to dive into your pregnancy and we can head to the birth.
Yeah, so excited to chat with you today, Stephanie. So hi, everyone. My name's Mary Richardson, and my husband Trent and I live in Chicago. We're both from the Midwest originally. I by way of Michigan, and Trent's from Texas, but grew up in Indiana. So Midwest through and through. We both come from great families. We're super close with our families. I have two older sisters, one who has 4 kids, and the other who's actually due to have her baby boy any day now. So she's actually also taken this My Essential Birth course, and her husband are feeling very prepared for that first birth. So we're so excited for her. And then, yeah, my husband's an only child, but I think we're very close with his parents. And early on dating, we both talked about really desiring to have kids. So we're so excited to have our first baby boy now, Dean. This is actually my second pregnancy, though. I had a miscarriage with our first at 8 weeks. And so that was, really sad, but we're so excited when we got pregnant a few months later and were able to carry to full term with Dean. And yeah, we waited actually to find out the gender until we had the baby. So that was a real fun surprise, and would highly recommend for any moms out there who are trying to make that decision. It was such a great thing to wait.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite thing. And I know I've shared that. We didn't do that until my third. And I was like, we have 2 boys. In my head, I'm like, well, it's for sure going to be a girl for starters. And then secondly, I'm like, oh, like that'll be so fun to not know. And it was the best. And then we had a boy. I mean, spoiler alert, right? But anyway, so I was like so certain, but it was really, really fun to be like, are you a boy? Are you a girl? And yeah, not know. I love that you did it with your first. It's so,
and
did it really take people off? Because people were upset with us that like, well, I don't know what to get them. And,
I think the hardest part for me was actually because my sister did find out. And so she called us, and I was towards the end. I was in my 3rd trimester at that point. And I was just like, well, if she's having a boy, then maybe I have to have a girl, because that's how that works. And I got all like in my head about it, because we thought the entire pregnancy, we were like, yeah, it's going to be a boy, I think. We wanted a boy, but we were fine with either. It's such a blessing to have any children. And yeah, working through those emotions. But I wouldn't say people were as mad, but I think like there was lots of questions always, 'cause you say you're pregnant. Oh, are you having boy and girl? Oh, no, I'm waiting. So you just kind of have that same conversation over and over.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, tell me a little about your pregnancy. Was it pretty textbook? Anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, I would say, thankfully, I did have nausea, but I never threw up in the mornings. I wasn't really into breakfast, I would say, that first trimester, but really that nausea started to subside right after 12 weeks, which I was really grateful for because I know that's not the case with everyone. I really didn't enjoy like eggs and yogurt and things I would normally be eating in the morning. And so that was really hard because, you're trying to keep that protein up for pregnancy, but also everything I wanted to crave was carbs like bagels and waffles and things like that. So, made it through those first that first trimester, and then things tended to level out, which was good. I think my second trimester, I had some sciatica pop up, and so that was causing some pain in my lower back and kind of my left side. So I started seeing a chiropractor, and that really helped being able to keep my hips aligned, and I saw them right up until my due date, so would highly recommend that. And yeah, help keep the baby head down and all of those things. And then I had like white coat syndrome too, so I ended up having high blood pressure, but it was only when I was in my midwife's office. And so with that, she just had me take it at home. And I just tracked that like the last trimester, and it was always fine at home. And then we just kind of knew that when I went in the office, it would probably be a little elevated, but it was never like preeclampsia level, thankfully. And I never had that. So, and then the other thing, I had GBS, that I was GBS positive. And so with that, then had to be on antibiotics when I delivered.
Okay. Well, you mentioned midwife. Tell me a little bit about your providers.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I had that miscarriage, and initially I was with an OB's office and walked through the miscarriage with them. Got my ultrasound done there after, just to like make sure everything was cleared out. And so I started with them again with this second pregnancy because that's kind of who I already had some care with. But at around 16 weeks, I really started to decide I wanted to do more of a natural birth, maybe have a doula in the room. And when I started bringing these things up to my provider, she kind of was like, well, the rooms can get crowded. We want to make sure that the mom's making all the decisions. And that kind of was off-putting to me. I didn't really like that they weren't super supportive of having, a doula or someone there, who was more holistic minded. And then when I didn't really want any of the vaccines for the baby or for myself during pregnancy, those were some things that like, again, they were pushing, didn't really have the research to say like why I should be having these things. And as I dove into it more, I really realized like I didn't want these for myself or for my baby. And so that caused me to start asking around at my church if anyone else had used midwives, asking people here in Chicago what they would recommend. And someone at my church had delivered with the midwife that I switched to, and she had 2 home births. And so I was really interested in the idea of either a birth center or a home birth. So I toured with my husband a birthing center here in Chicago, but realized like they had great services there, but they just I felt like I'd be more comfortable in my home environment. And so we decided that we wanted to go for that home birth. And so then I met with this midwife who did home births, and we just really connected. I felt like the appointments were way more intentional. I didn't feel rushed. She answered all of my questions. Um, our first visit with her, she pulled out pictures of other moms having home births just to like really give you a picture of like what this looks like. And she, yeah, was way more open to what we wanted, and the not vaccinating and just different comfort measures. I really didn't want a C-section or an epidural. And it felt like when I was with the OB, they were kind of saying, well, we'll wait and see, like that may happen. We're not going to make any promises. And I understand that it can end there, but I don't want that to be kind of the precedent that's set at the beginning where that's going to be something that's offered to me. I really wanted to, do it naturally and have a provider that supported that. So we were really grateful to make that switch at about 20 weeks to the midwife and stuck with her throughout the entire process.
If you've been thinking, I just don't want to feel caught off guard or out of control during birth, I hear you. Most mamas go in hoping things go smoothly, but without a clear plan, it's easy to feel overwhelmed in the moment. That's why My Essential Birth gives you a step-by-step approach so you know what to expect and how to handle it. Right now, you get $100 off, and you also get the Mother's Day bonus bundle, including the Birth Partner Guide, which is honestly like your birth partner's cheat sheet for exactly what to do and say during labor. Plus, the meditation track and affirmations to help you stay grounded instead of spiraling when things get intense. So if you're ready to feel calm, confident, and empowered, go to myessentialbirth.com/get started, all one word, and jump in today.
So when did you start the birth course, or were you listening to podcasts and stuff before? Like, is that where the idea to look for a midwife came from?
Yes. So I actually work in downtown Chicago, and I still remember very clearly finding your podcast. I was sitting at a restaurant there and having my lunch, and I just typed into Spotify natural birth, and your podcast popped up. And so I started listening, and I decided that, wow, okay, there's like a lot here. And there was a lot of great information you were giving me. And so I came home, started talking to my husband. I was like, I think I really want to do this natural birth route if possible. I think it was definitely after listening to some of your podcasts and hearing other mothers' stories shared there, as well as just the topical things that you would walk through about pregnancy. And so that really helped me to make the decision to want to look into midwives. And then talking to other moms, again, at my church who had done more of natural childbirth and what they found beneficial about it, made me decide to want to make that switch. And then shortly after, I think you were running a special on the birth course. And so I said, all right, now's my time to join. So that did work. That carrot was dangled and I took it. So yes, we were really excited to join the birth course. And I think for us, it was really to understand more about like the stages of labor, knowing it's our first baby and what to expect, as well as coping mechanisms. I think there was a lot that was laid out in the birth course that helped us understand comfort measures that my husband could provide, things we could try out before the birth. And so it was a very nice, holistic course. And I really appreciated all the different stages that you walk through. So I felt very prepared going in, as prepared as you can with your first.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. Okay, perfect. How about dad? Let's talk about your birth partner and what that looked like for you guys preparing. So it sounds like you were pretty good about communicating, hey, I have this thing, I'm interested in it, all this. And isn't it funny? I don't know about you, but it's not until we're pregnant, or it wasn't until I was pregnant that I thought about any of this. It was like people get pregnant, they have babies. That sounds great. Oh, I'm excited to be a mom and like have a belly and like whatever. And then you get pregnant and you're like, the whole world stops and you have to decide, everything that we're putting into our bodies and all the decisions that we're making. It's like all of a sudden it expands into this big thing where we're like, wow, we have to take care of this little tiny human inside of us. And how do we do that properly? And then the wheels start turning and you just like, it's down the rabbit hole. And you just started that rabbit, like for the rest of your life, right? Once we are on this train, you never get off and it just bleeds into everything else in the best way possible. But let's talk about your birth partner, because I want to hear how you guys kind of worked through stuff together, what kind of communication you had, and then what were those daily things that you were doing to prepare together?
Yeah. So my husband, Trent, is amazing and was so supportive of deciding to go the more natural route. I know that sometimes that can be a challenge between one partner maybe being more medically minded and the other being more natural. And thankfully for us, that wasn't the case. We both live very natural lifestyles. We like to, eat organic and work out and do all those things, take care of our bodies. And so it just made sense for us that would be how we want to bring our child into the world. So I think with him, very much like most nights we would, talk about birth things. I feel like it comes up at the dinner table or, hey, I learned this on a podcast or whatever. So he was getting a lot of information through me doing my research, but he also did the course with me, especially the different stages of labor. And I remember going to some of our midwife appointments together, and he would bring up something and the midwife would be like very impressed with how much knowledge she had just from the course. So I appreciated that like going into it, I knew he understood the basics of labor a bit more than the everyday gentleman, and that he was able to really support me by also being knowledgeable. So I think any advice out there is like, make sure your partner also understands these things just as much as you do, whether that's through conversations, doing the course together, having them listen to a podcast. But I think just him knowing the terminology and what was going to happen made me feel really confident that he'd be a good support system during labor when I couldn't always advocate for myself. Yeah, and I think for him, he helped me keep my protein up, made sure that I had the time to go to the gym and work out, and just taking care of me. I will say a challenge that we had to overcome was when I was 26 weeks, my husband had a torn meniscus and he had to go in for meniscus surgery. And with that, he could not walk for 6 weeks or put any weight on his leg. And so, late in pregnancy, not super late, but it was, I was very pregnant at that point. I'm full-time taking care of him, making sure that he's showered and dressed and all of that, doing the grocery shopping, cooking. And so it did kind of make pregnancy fly by, because when you're a caretaker, you kind of don't think as much about yourself and you're just making sure that that person's okay. But I also was able to work from home during that time, and we got to spend a lot of great quality time together. And so it was the silver lining of that. It was a blessing to be able to be together, and no worries, because he took care of me on the back end after having the baby. So, that's marriage, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely an unexpected turn midway through pregnancy.
It's kind of like you got a hint on like, here's how to take care of a baby before you have your baby. Just wash and clothe and take care of. And
yes, we joke. Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
How funny. Okay, tell me about your daily things. Like what were the things that you're like, I took care of my body this way, I did these exercises, I ate this food, what did that look like?
Yes. So after first trimester, once I was able to get back to my normal breakfast routine, I definitely would start the day with some eggs, make sure that I had like avocado and maybe a carb. So I was trying to always do the proteins, fats, carbs, make sure that in every meal I was getting that in, not skipping meals. I also did the 3 free exercises. So those pelvic tilts, the inverted lean, and the deep squat every day. I was very consistent with that. I did F45 strength training 3 to 4 times a week. I will say at the end of pregnancy, I tapered back a little bit on that and was doing more walking. I did swimming towards the end, and that helped a lot with my blood pressure too, just keeping that low. And then yeah, I'm trying to think what else during pregnancy, just stretching in general. I really loved my yoga ball and being able to stretch on that, sit on that towards the end of pregnancy. It was the most comfortable, do my hip circles, all that kind of stuff. And then I think too, listening to the podcast throughout, just hearing positive birth stories from other mothers was really important to me, again, because it was my first. So just trying to get as much knowledge as I could. And yeah, that was kind of it. Praying. We prayed over the baby pretty much every night at dinner, and just knowing, God, this is your plan. This little one. So my faith was super important throughout, not being anxious and wanting to control, because there's a lot of situations in pregnancy that you do want to be in the driver's seat. And it's a really hard time because you can only control so much. And even when you think you're in control, you aren't. And so I really relied on my faith throughout my pregnancy, and every day leaning on the Lord to give me strength to get me to full term and bring the baby into the world healthy and happy.
Love it. Was there anything at the end, talk about maybe as you're coming up to the end here and your midwife's appointments, you did mention you had GBS. It sounds like you did choose to have antibiotics for that. So is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I didn't. Okay, so we'll get into it in the labor,
Okay.
but I was planning for a home birth. That did not happen, which again, we can get into that in the labor. So when I was planning for the home birth, I wasn't going to do antibiotics. We were going to just do the wait and see approach and kind of monitor for if there were any symptoms. And my midwife was okay with that approach. But then when we had to transfer to the hospital for induction, immediately they were like, yes, we need you to be on antibiotics. And it was a harder time to push back there than with my midwife doing a home birth route. So yeah, had to do penicillin.
Okay. So let's kind of move into that then, what this looked like towards the end of your pregnancy and then onto the birth.
Yeah, great. So I did the red raspberry leaf tea at the end, ate the 6 dates, walked, curb walked, did everything. I swear it was a running joke. Every night I'd go to bed and I'd be like, tonight's the night. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm checking to see if my mucus plug's coming out. None of that happened. But, you're trying, you learn all this stuff. And so you're looking for those signs of labor. And I will say, so I was 41 weeks and 3 days. And I had my non-stress test. And so I'll kick it off from there. But I think, you get past, again, that guess date at 40 weeks and you're sort of like, okay, it could be soon. But I know in the course we talk about it being maybe 41 and 1 for most first-time moms. So I was just a little bit past that, but I was definitely ready to have the baby and starting to get pretty uncomfortable. But just trying to stay positive and be like, he'll get here when he comes and all those things, positive affirmations. But I had my non-stress test with my midwife at 41 weeks and 3 days, and that went fine. But to complete the full biophysical profile, she wanted me to do an ultrasound. And she was not a part of a hospital. She just had her own clinic. And so she had 2 options for me. One that could be an in-home ultrasound tech coming to my house, or I could go to the hospital downtown and do an ultrasound there with the midwife group that she partners with. And so we thought, oh, that sounds kind of nice. We'll do it in our house. So we had the guy come the next day, and it was probably at like 7 or 8 in the morning. So it was really early. And throughout my pregnancy, I feel like my baby didn't always move a ton in the morning. I think he's kind of, and I see that now that he's out, he's not really a morning person. So the technician came. I tried to drink a little water and some juice and eat a little something before. I will mention too, that I had only had one ultrasound throughout my entire pregnancy at 12 weeks. And so for me, I wasn't used to doing ultrasounds. And so kind of having to do this one really late in pregnancy, I wasn't as used to like all the protocol and procedure with an ultrasound. So when he came and did it, he only spent about 15 minutes with us and, took the measurements and all of the things that he needed to do. And then he said, okay, great. I'm going to call your midwife with the results. I have to have someone look over this and then she'll give you a call. And so we're like thinking, okay, it sounds great. Like he got everything he needs. So he leaves and then our midwife calls us probably, 10 minutes or so after. And she says, I'm going to need you guys to go to the hospital. He had said that you got a 4 out of 8 score on your ultrasound and that the amniotic fluid looks cloudy, as well as your baby doesn't seem to be moving and practice breathing. So like those are all very scary things to hear as a mom. You're thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like I can feel him in there, but they're saying they're seeing these things. And so my husband and I were like, okay, we'll go to the hospital and get this other ultrasound. But knowing that, I was planning for a home birth. So I had to quick print out my birth plan. So for all you moms who are planning for a home birth, make sure you also have your birth plan just in case. Quick pack a hospital bag. I did take a shower because I was like, well, who knows what's going to happen. And so then we headed to the hospital, and my midwife met us there, and they redid a ultrasound, and actually everything looked fine. So at that point, it was a few hours later in the morning, baby was moving. They didn't see any cloudy fluid. They didn't see anything was wrong. I got an 8 out of 8, but the midwife and OB then came into the room and talked to my husband and I and said, because you had this odd reading this morning, we would recommend induction. And it was a really hard decision. I'm not going to lie, because you're seeing your baby be perfectly healthy a few hours later, but earlier they were saying that they're not breathing, they're not moving, they're not doing the things that they should be. And so, and being later in pregnancy, we decided to do the induction route, which was really difficult because I really wanted to be able to feel labor and understand what was going on with my body and kind of let it do what it wanted to, versus the intervention of Pitocin, where it's artificially starting labor and your body is kind of shocked into going into labor. And so they admitted me, and we started with a Foley balloon to get me. So they did a cervical check. I was 2 centimeters and 50% effaced. So I had quite a bit to go. So we did the Foley balloon, and they wanted to get me to 4 centimeters, and then they were going to take that out and start the Pitocin. So I probably didn't rest as much as I should at the beginning. I think when they put the Foley balloon in, I was, walking the hallways and moving and sitting backwards on the toilet, the dilation station. I don't know. I think I got labor backwards, even though I knew all of these things from the birth course. So either way, it took 2 hours. The Foley balloon came out. Then they started the Pitocin and the penicillin. And I was on that for 24 hours because they kept trying to want to rupture my membranes, artificially rupture my membranes. And I just wanted to keep waiting because I wanted my body, again, naturally to be doing it. But I feel like once you start on Pitocin and it's the artificial, it's the cascade of interventions. Like my body wasn't really responding the way that I would have hoped to just keep contracting and keep laboring on its own. And so after 24 hours, they did another cervical check, and I allowed them to sweep my membranes to just, again, try and do it. I really didn't want them to rupture the bag because I knew that it would break that cushion and start to be more painful with the contractions. And so we waited those 24 hours. It wasn't happening. So I allowed them then to break my bag of waters. After that, things really picked up, and I started to actually understand what a contraction felt like. And I immediately, I was walking and moving through the contractions, but then I wanted to get in the shower because nature's epidural, and it truly is. So labored in the shower for a little while. I would say you start getting that labor land, and time really passes by. You can be in there for hours and you don't really realize it. And I always wondered what labor land was. And now I understand. Just time passes so much faster. It's slow for maybe your partner and your midwife because they're like, we've been here for 5 hours. But for you, it seems like 5 minutes. And so used the shower, then got in bed. We were using some coping techniques of counter pressure, massaging on my back, just gentle touches, strokes, just wanted people near me. And then it really picked up that second night. And I got back in the bathtub and labored in there for a long time. And that's where I went through transition. And I think that was the coolest part about going. So I did do unmedicated throughout the whole thing. I didn't do an epidural or any laughing gas or anything. Was feeling the baby pass through, during transition, pass through my cervix. And I did a contraction with my legs apart in the bathtub and then with my knees together, and just feeling him. Then at that point, I didn't know if it was a him or her, drop down and being like, whoa, okay. And then there's that relief after that for a little bit. And that was one of my favorite parts of going unmedicated, is just really being in tune with that happening and knowing, okay, I made it through that hard part where you say you can't do it. And I know in the course, you kind of talk about that a little bit. And for me, there was that point, when you're going through transition where I looked at my midwife and I'm like, I didn't ask for the epidural, but I was kind of like, I don't know how much longer I can take this. Like, these are really intense contractions, even though being in the tub and pouring water over my stomach really helped me work through contractions. I was starting to get to that point of like, okay, this is really intense and I just don't know how much I can take. And then that happened. And so I was really happy to get through that part of labor. My contractions started to then spread out a little bit, as they should, because, you're starting to get ready for pushing. But then, of course, being on Pitocin and in the hospital setting, they want to keep them every 2 to 3 minutes. And so then they started ramping up the Pitocin again, wanted me to get out of the tub for pushing, which I really didn't want to because I felt like I was, comfortable there, but they wanted me in the bed. So I stayed in the tub as long as I could. And then after really starting to like bear down, we moved me into the bed and I got on all fours immediately because I was like, okay, this, seems to be a good position to push in. So you don't tear. Pushed there for a while. I will say I pushed for 3 hours. So tried multiple positions. I pushed in that position. I pushed with a squat bar and like a sheet wrapped around it, trying to like pull myself up to push and using that. And then I ended up giving birth in the side lying position with my left leg up because I was just so exhausted at that point. I mean, I'd been laboring from a Thursday, Friday, and then I had the baby Saturday morning. So physically, I was just really gassed. And that was difficult because you want to make sure you're in the right position, but you're also just so tired that you're like, okay, I just want this baby to come out. And I think for me, the hardest part was pushing, which is, yeah, it was exhausting on me. And I think it was because it started to become coach pushing, even though I didn't want that. But I think when they were telling me, keep going, keep pushing, it was exhausting me more. And so my midwife, who was acting as my doula at that point, my out of hospital midwife, was like, can we give her a break and just turn off all the lights, everybody leave the room and just give her a minute. And so for about 15, 20 minutes, I was able to just only push when I wanted to in a very calm environment. And my husband will say that the baby's head was like almost out at that point when I was just calm and only pushing when I felt the urge. And it was really unfortunate because then the doctors came back in and kind of disrupted that. And all that to say, like, I wish we had spoken up a bit more and said like, no, I just want to, push this way. Looking back, I think that was one of our biggest regrets, but they ended up coming back in. And then the OB, because I'd been pushing for so long, was like, okay, I'm going to assist on this next push a little bit. And so she stuck her fingers kind of down by my perineum, which would not recommend because that's what caused my tear. And it did get his head out, but I ended up having a 3rd-degree tear after that, which made my recovery a lot harder. But yeah, then he came out, and of course you're just so excited that like you don't really realize what has happened down there. And they put him right on my chest, just like I wanted. We waited and delayed cord clamping until it was white and not pulsating anymore. My husband was able to cut the cord. I delivered the placenta about 15 minutes after the birth. And yeah, then we got 2 hours of just skin contact time and it was all glorious. But yeah, that last bit of pushing in the labor was just really difficult. But yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a story. I was thinking about just the amount of time that you were in labor and the fact that you went unmedicated and the strength that you had to have mentally and physically to work through that and for that amount of time. And I'm sure all the other things, going on in the background, just with it being an induction and an area that you weren't prepared to give birth in and all of that. I think a lot of that is a testament to your preparation, though, your ability to kind of work through that and get to the other side. And there's always things that we can look back on and say, oh, I wish, I would have done this, or I wish this went a little bit different. But even the fact that you were were working out during pregnancy, you were eating well, you were, doing these things to take care of your body, it allowed you to still be on top of that birth all the way through, which I think is really powerful. I love that you shared some different things that you did that kind of relieved some of what was happening, including at the end there where you were talking about the dim lights and the being left alone, and which I'm sure you will take in, with you to your next birth for sure. But I think it's really important for moms to hear that too. Like we get to learn as we go sometimes. And just that contrast for you, I'm sure is like so good to be able to have with you for your next birth too. But I think that's such a neat thing. How when we are allowed to tune into our intuition, when that space is protected, when we can just kind of like be where we're at in our labor, the difference that makes. And so it can happen. I mean, you're proof that it can happen even in a hospital setting. It doesn't matter where you're at. It's just being able to create that. So I'm really glad that you shared that too. Can we let's dive into your postpartum just a touch, unless there's anything else you wanted to add to the labor and the pregnancy and all of that.
No, I think the other reason why too it had switched from a midwife to an OB while I was delivering the baby was because he ended up being 9 pounds, 12 ounces. So he was a big baby. And so they were concerned about shoulder dystocia as well. And so that's why they also had like more people in the room, which was just a precaution they were taking. Ended up being fine. Nothing was wrong. But yeah, I think sometimes with bigger babies, they get real nervous. But thankfully, there wasn't anything wrong with him. And yeah, so that was another thing that wasn't great, was having all this extra providers,
Right.
but that's just, their policy and what they wanted, what they felt comfortable with. So yeah, but yeah, postpartum. So after delivering our beautiful baby boy, thankfully my mom was able to come relieve my husband because we were both very exhausted after the labor and him staying up with me and not sleeping well in a hospital chair. He's 6'9", so they were not
Oh
built
my goodness.
for tall men. So he went home and my mom came, and that was just such a joy to have her there. I think it allowed me to just relax, and she really took care of the baby that first night in the hospital. We only stayed in the hospital for 24 hours, wanted to get home into our environment as soon as possible. But she was a huge help. She breastfed my sisters and I, and she's just amazing. And so she was really able to help me with making sure my latch was down and getting him to nurse. He nursed a ton in that first, 2 hours. So then he was really tired after the birth and pretty full. Their tummies are so tiny. So we just continued throughout the night to try and, get him to take some milk, some of that colostrum. And I've never pumped. I'm almost 4 months postpartum, and I really made that known. I didn't want to pump at the hospital. I didn't want to express into a spoon or anything like that. So it was helpful having her there to like champion me in getting me started with breastfeeding those first, few hours. But then also she stayed with me for like a week after the baby, and just being able to be there for support. So for anyone who is hoping to exclusively breastfeed, I would highly recommend getting someone who has breastfed before, whether that's a friend, a family member, or a lactation consultant, to be with you that first bit, because I know it can be really hard. You're learning, the baby's learning, and your body's never done that before. And so having someone to help coach you and also just give you reassurance that it will continue to get better and better. And now 4 months in, I'm so glad I stuck to it, because it's just amazing to be like, I'm nourishing this baby and he's like almost 19 pounds now. And like, it's just the most special bond. So it is hard. Like, you're very sore and tender those first few weeks, but it gets better. So hang in there. You've got this, moms. And then I would say too, like for postpartum, again, having that care. My mom was amazing. She had bought like all my postpartum diapers and tucks and foam and all that, and had it at home for when I got home from the hospital. And so we were able to make those ice diapers and all the fun things that you need postpartum. So I'd highly recommend making sure you've got that stuff set up at home if you're not giving birth at home. And then take as much as you can from the hospital to bring back home. And yeah, you'll get through, that first soreness. I think my husband was a huge support to me too. Like at night with night feeds, he would always change the baby's diaper, help me get up, go to the bathroom because your core is just so weak. I didn't expect that as much, and just the help you would need in that first week, getting up, going to the bathroom, making, your pad to put back on, getting you back in bed. So would highly recommend, trying to partner with your husband during those late night feeds in the beginning, or have someone there to help you, because you will need that help in those first couple weeks. And I think those are my main tips for postpartum. And pelvic floor. So I'm in pelvic floor physical therapy now. Would recommend, if you can, start that while you're pregnant, or just get a better understanding of that mind muscle connection to your pelvic floor. And you can start those breathing exercises like right after, birth, in those first days, just to make sure that you're keeping your pelvic floor engaged, because now I feel like I didn't do that right away, and I'm building it back. But I would recommend trying to just keep it engaged throughout pregnancy and right after birth as much as possible.
Yeah. When did you start pelvic floor therapy postpartum?
Yeah, so I had to wait until my bleeding stopped, which was, I think, like 8 weeks after birth, like fully stopped, and was feeling good enough to do it. So I think they say anywhere 4, 6 weeks. It just depends on the person. But for me, it was, 8 weeks. And so I'm about 2 months almost into, or a month or so into it. And it's hard, but it's good.
But it's good. And how about the tearing? What did you do to make it feel well and heal well postpartum? Do you have any tips for moms on that?
Yeah. So my midwife was amazing. Her name's Sarah, and she actually grew like comfrey leaves in her garden. She's very holistic. And so she brought that over, and we would do sitz baths and put some of those in there. You can also do like the Earth Mama sitz bath, would recommend that for any moms who have tears. It just felt really good to soak and keep the area clean. And then air drying was super key too. So I would do my sitz bath, and then I would not put the diaper right back on. I'd go and lay in bed and just kind of have a fan on me and just air dry a little bit. Because if it keeps staying like covered up and not getting any fresh air to heal it, it's going to take longer. So that was a great recommendation from her, as well as Manuka honey. So I would put that on gauze pads and stick that on the stitches. And that just helped the stitches heal up. And I don't have any like tightness or scar tissue, thankfully, after the tear. So they did do a good job stitching me, and I've healed well, which is such a answer to prayer, because I have never had any injuries or had to recover from something. So birth was the first time that I have really had to like slow down and really learn what it means to recover and heal, and just give yourself a lot of time and grace. And it's been a learning process. Birth has been the most humbling thing I have ever gone through, becoming a mom. I think a lot of times you might look at other moms and be like, oh, I'll never have to deal with that, or this won't happen to me, or this is what I hope happens. And I think I've just come to realize you have to really give birth, allow birth to come with open hands, and what happens, happens. Yes, do all the prep. And to your point, like, I did do as much as I could, but you also just have to realize that things are going to come up that you didn't expect, and learning to roll with that and handle it as it comes.
Okay. Any final reflections, things you would have done differently, or things that you felt like you did really well? And then I want to jump into your best advice for moms, best advice for dads.
Yeah, I think for me, continuing to work out was super key. Keep moving. I know it can be hard. Some days you just want to lay on the couch and you don't want to do your stretches, or you would want to eat that unhealthy thing. And I think for me, it benefited me so much staying strong, because you will lose a lot of your muscle and stuff right after giving birth. And so you want to go into it being the strongest possible version of yourself, the healthiest version. So don't treat pregnancy like just time to slack off and indulge in everything that you want. It's okay to do that sometimes, of course. My last week of pregnancy, I got a Dairy Queen blizzard because I really felt like that. But I think, staying on top of your health will go a long way, and it helps you in the recovery as well. Things I would do differently, probably just with like pushing, trying to have less coaching with that, and using more breathing techniques, maybe doing some more work ahead of birth to prepare for how to breathe through pushing and those contractions and things like that. But I think that would be my advice, and pelvic floor work.
Yeah. Okay. So what is your best advice for moms and best advice for dads?
Yeah. So I think for both partners, again, I had mentioned earlier that my faith is super important to me. And throughout the entire pregnancy journey, trying to get pregnant, once you're pregnant, and then the postpartum, just having that faith and relationship with God to lean on and not have to do it all yourself was really key, and would highly recommend to anyone who either is exploring religion or is working through or has a great relationship with God. Like, pray during your pregnancy, have those intentions set for what you want to happen, but also realize you're not in control. And if you're having any anxiety, it just was really helpful for me to understand, I'm not in control of this. He's already decided how this baby's going to come into the world and who's going to be there in the room and how it's all going to go. And he's writing that story. And it's amazing now to be on this podcast, because I do remember being kind of discouraged after birth and being like, oh, I didn't have this perfect birth. Like, I'd love to be on the podcast and share, because I wanted something to be this perfect story. And look, here I am, being raw and open. And I didn't have the perfect birth that I thought, quote unquote, was what I wanted to happen and what needed to happen. And like, it's still amazing that I get to share. And he can use you in so many different ways. And so that's been really cool testament with this birth and pregnancy journey. And then I think for dads, support your partner in that, pray over them, but also help do the research too. If your partner is interested in this, and maybe you are a little bit more medically minded, I would just say for those dads to really understand like what your wife is asking and what they're wanting to do, and look into it yourself. Don't immediately shut them down, because I do think it's a really beautiful process to go through as a woman. And having a partner that supports you in that makes it a lot easier, and you feel more relaxed and comfortable going into birth. So trying to get on the same page as your partner and not fight against them.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
If you loved what you heard today, the very best way to support this podcast and help other moms to find it is to leave a quick review. I read one at the beginning of the episodes, and I would love for yours to be next. And if you're ready for even more pregnancy, birth, and postpartum goodness, come join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I will hold your hand and walk you through pregnancy and birth step by step, so you're totally prepared for a birth you'll love. See you next week.